The rusty lantern was alive with the hum of a typical Friday night. Neon signs flickered in the windows, country music twanged from a half-broken jukebox, and locals laughed over beers while pool balls cracked against each other in the back. But beneath the noise, Clearwater Ridge always carried an unspoken rule: know your place. Aisha Brooks and her twin sister Amara stepped inside, drawing a few quick glances as they crossed the wooden floor. They weren't tourists, though they hadn't lived here in years. This was their hometown, the place they'd left behind to build careers in law enforcement. Both women had survived the toughest FBI training, undercover stings, and federal operations across the country. But tonight, they only wanted something simple: a drink, a laugh, maybe even a sense of belonging again. They took a small table near the back, sliding onto worn leather seats. Amara ordered whiskey neat, Aisha a gin and tonic. The bar's owner, Miguel Alvarez, gave them a nod. He'd known their mother back in the day, and his quiet respect was one of the few warm things left in Clearwater Ridge. But warmth doesn't last long when predators smell blood. 3 men swaggered in, the smell of alcohol preceding them. Off-duty cops, still with badges clipped to their belts like trophies: Sergeant Wade Mercer, Officer Troy Harlan, and Rookie Cody Voss. Their laughter was loud, their movements unsteady, and their eyes immediately locked onto the twins. "Look at that," Wade slurred, his voice a low drawl. "Double trouble, or maybe double dessert." Troy chuckled, sliding behind Amara's chair. "Where you ladies from?" "Don't look local. We are local," Amara replied evenly, sipping her drink. "Clearwater Ridge born and raised, really?" Cody swayed on his feet, making an exaggerated hourglass with his hands. "Could have fooled me. Don't see beauty like that hanging around this town. You must be lost." The laughter from their table died down. The jukebox still played, but suddenly it felt like background noise, like the bar itself was holding its breath. A woman near the counter grabbed her purse and slipped out quietly. Not wanting to be a part of what was coming, Aisha leaned back, her voice calm but steady. "Why don't you 3 take a step back? Enjoy your night somewhere else." Wade smirked, towering over her table. His bloodshot eyes locked on hers. The stench of whiskey clung to him. "Or what, sweetheart? You gonna teach me a lesson?" Amara's hand tightened around her glass, but her face stayed composed. Across the bar, Miguel was wiping down the same spot on the counter, his jaw clenched. His other hand quietly reached below the bar, flipping a switch. A tiny red light glowed on the underside of the liquor shelf, a hidden camera coming alive. "Last warning," Aisha said, straightening her spine. Her dark eyes didn't flinch. "Walk away while you still can." The tension was thick enough to choke on. Wade dragged a chair across the floor with a screech that made everyone wince. He spun it around, straddled it backward, and leaned in uncomfortably close. "That's cute. You think you're in charge here?" He looked back at his fellow officers. "Ladies must have forgotten whose town this is." Troy's hands slid from Amara's chair to her shoulders. She froze, her expression hard as stone. "Don't touch me," she said quietly, each word sharp as glass. "Or what?" Troy sneered. "You gonna call the cops?" The 3 men burst out laughing, their voices booming through the room. Cody leaned closer, eyes hazy but cruel. "Check out those curves. Twins, huh? Double the chocolate." He snorted, staggering a little but keeping his gaze fixed on Amara. Several patrons shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A young man in the corner slipped his phone out, trying to film discreetly. But Wade's sharp whistle froze him. Later, Wade said darkly. The phone slid back into the man's pocket. Miguel approached the table, tray of empty glasses in hand. "Gentlemen," he said, keeping his voice measured, "maybe you should cool it." Wade didn't even glance at him. "Go back to washing dishes before I decide to check your papers again." Miguel's face flushed, but he forced himself to retreat. Back at the table, Amara's nails dug into her palm beneath the tablecloth. Aisha gave her sister the faintest shake of her head. "Not yet." Wade leaned in closer, his voice dropping into a growl. "Here's how this is gonna work. You're gonna smile, buy us around, and apologize for the attitude. Maybe if you ask real nice, we'll forget this little disrespect." Aisha picked up her drink, took a slow sip, then set it down deliberately. "Here's what's actually going to happen. You're going to take your hands off my sister, Step away from our table and leave us alone. Because right now, you're making a very big mistake." The words were icy, confident, but the smirks spreading across the officers' faces told another story. They didn't care. They didn't fear consequences. Not in a town where the badge belonged to them, and the system bowed at their feet. Cody swayed, pulling his cuffs from his belt with a flourish. "Sounds like a threat to me, Sarge. Definitely threatening an officer," Troy agreed. Squeezing Amara's shoulders harder, the room went silent. No laughter, no music, just the heavy pulse of danger pressing in. Aisha and Amara locked eyes, a silent conversation passing between them. They had survived worse. They knew how to fight. But right here, right now, one wrong move would light a fire they couldn't control. The three men leaned closer, circling their table like predators. Wade's voice dripped with smug authority. "Would you look at that? Twins who don't know their place. Guess we'll have to teach you." The last of the patrons turned away, staring into half-empty glasses, pretending they weren't witnesses. Miguel disappeared into the back room, his hands shaking as he dialed a number. But deep down, even he knew help might not come. Not in Clearwater Ridge. Not against men like these. "Back up," Aisha said sharply, her voice carrying across the bar. "You're drunk and you're making fools of yourselves." Wade's face darkened. He leaned in so close she could feel his hot breath on her skin. "Making fools of ourselves." He gestured to their outfits, his laugh ugly. "You come in here dressed like that, shaking what your mama gave you, and we're the fools." Amara's voice was quiet but unyielding. "Our clothes aren't an invitation, and your badge isn't a license to harass women." The words cut through the air like a blade. But Wade's smirk only widened. He reached out, his hand moving fast as mack. The sound of his palm striking Amara's body cracked like a gunshot across the bar. Her chair screeched back as she shot to her feet, fury blazing across her face. Aisha lunged toward her, but Troy slammed her against the wall, his forearm pinning her chest. The wooden paneling dug splinters into her cheek. The room seemed to shrink. The lights glared brighter, the music stopped, and every set of eyes pretended not to see. Wade laughed, cruel and triumphant. "Now that's how you teach respect." The bar went silent after that slap. It echoed through the rusty lantern like a gunshot, leaving only the sound of Amara's ragged breath and the scrape of her chair. Her eyes blazed with fury, her body trembling not from fear but from outrage. Aisha tried to surge forward, but Troy's bulk slammed her against the wall, his forearm crushing her collarbone. The wooden paneling bit into her cheek, splinters stinging her skin. She twisted, her FBI training screaming at her to counter, to break his grip. But she forced herself still. "Not yet, not here, can't take a compliment." Wade sneered, circling Amara. His bloodshot eyes scanned her body, lingering far too long. "You strut in here dressed like that, and you think you get to set the rules?" Amara's voice trembled with rage, not weakness. "Touch me again, and you'll regret it, regret it." Cody cackled, stumbling closer. His young face was flushed, his grin twisted. "That sounds like a threat to me." "You hear that, Sarge? She's threatening an officer." "Sure did." Troy barked from where he had Aisha pinned. His weight pressed harder, making it harder for her to breathe. "Serious offense." Wade leaned back in his chair, spreading his arms wide like a king on his throne. "Looks like we've got ourselves to troublemakers. Disorderly conduct, threatening law enforcement. Might need to teach you ladies some manners downtown." The last word rolled off his tongue like a promise of punishment. Across the room, Miguel froze behind the bar. His phone was still tucked under the counter, its red recording light blinking faintly. But his eyes darted to the door. No one was coming. Not tonight. Not against these men. Amara's jaw tightened. She had endured slurs, harassment, and men like Wade all her life. But never had she been so exposed in her hometown. Humiliated in front of strangers who looked away. "Last chance," Aisha choked out, her voice sharp despite Troy's crushing grip. "Let us go, walk away. Because you're about to make the worst mistake of your life." Wade leaned in so close she could smell the sour whiskey on his breath. "The only mistake here, sweetheart, is thinking you've got any power. In this town, power wears a badge. Our badge." Cody's hands shook as he pulled his cuffs free, the metal clinking ominously in the heavy silence. "Want me to do the honors, Sarge?" Wade nodded lazily. "Start with her, Before Amara could react, Cody grabbed her wrists, jerking them behind her back. The cuffs snapped shut, the metal biting into her skin, deliberately too tight. She gasped as her shoulders twisted painfully. "That's better," Cody mocked, forcing her to her knees. "Not so high and mighty now, huh? Get off her." Aisha growled, struggling against Troy's weight. But he was stronger, pressing her harder into the wall. Wade chuckled, striding around to face her. He reached out, brushing a hand against her cheek. "You know what your problem is. No respect for authority. But we can fix that." Aisha jerked her head away, her curls tangling painfully in his fingers. Her eyes blazed with contempt. "You think this makes you powerful? You're nothing but cowards hiding behind a badge." The insult hit Wade like a spark on dry tinder. His face darkened, the smirk twisting into something uglier. Big words for someone about to spend the night in a cell. Troy wrenched Aisha's arms behind her back, slamming her face first into the wall. The cuffs bit deep into her wrists. Pain flared down her arms, but she ground her teeth, refusing to give him the satisfaction of a scream. The bar patrons kept their eyes glued to their drinks. A middle-aged couple slipped out the side door, not daring to look back. A young woman at a nearby table tried to raise her phone discreetly. But Cody spotted her, no cameras. He barked, snatching the device from her hand. He hurled it to the floor, the screen shattering into shards that skittered across the wood. The woman flinched, shrinking back into her seat. Miguel gripped the edge of the bar so tightly his knuckles turned white. His livelihood, his life, his safety all balanced on silence. But his eyes flicked to the faint red glow of his hidden camera. It was still rolling. At least the truth wasn't entirely lost. "On your feet," Wade ordered coldly. Cody yanked Amara up by the cuffs, making her stumble. Troy dragged Aisha away from the wall, shoving her so hard her knees nearly buckled. Both women's faces were set in masks of fury, but their bodies betrayed the humiliation. Hair disheveled, wrists bleeding from the steel, clothes wrinkled from rough handling. The patrons parted like water, clearing a path as the officers marched their captives through the bar. No one spoke. No one interfered. At the doorway, Wade paused, smirking as if to brand the moment into everyone's memory. "Let this be a reminder," he sneered. "This is my town, my rules, and anyone who forgets." He tightened his grip on Amara's arm. Ends up in cuffs, the night air hit them like a slap, humid, heavy, carrying the smell of asphalt and stale beer. A patrol car idled at the curb, its lights off, waiting like a predator. Troy shoved Aisha harder than necessary, sending her stumbling across the cracked pavement. "Careful there," he mocked. "Wouldn't want to add public intoxication to your charges." Cody swung open the back door. Amara was shoved inside, her body hitting the hard plastic seat. Aisha followed, her shoulders slamming against the frame as Troy forced her in. The cuffs dug deeper as she tried to shield herself from the impact. The door slammed shut. The sound final, like a cell door locking, through the bar's window. Faces watched, some worried, some curious, most indifferent. Miguel stood in the doorway, his apron still on, his phone still recording from his pocket. His eyes burned with rage and fear, but his feet stayed planted, inside the car. The sisters pressed together, wrists raw, shoulders aching. The silence was deafening, broken only by the sound of Wade's mocking voice through the window. "Such a waste," he said, his grin visible in the glow of the streetlight. "Could have been a fun night for everyone." The engine roared to life. The car pulled away from the curb, its headlights sweeping across the cracked asphalt. Amara clenched her jaw, fury simmering beneath her calm exterior. Her voice was low, meant only for her sister. "They think they've won." Aisha leaned close, her whisper sharp as a blade. "They have no idea who they're messing with." The patrol car disappeared into the night, carrying them toward the station, toward humiliation, toward danger, and toward a reckoning the men could never have imagined. The ride to the station felt endless. The patrol car bumped along cracked asphalt, the sisters swaying against each other with every turn. Streetlights flashed across their faces like interrogation lamps, momentary glimpses of their clenched jaws and determined eyes. Aisha shifted her wrists, testing the cuffs biting into her skin. The metal was deliberately too tight, cutting circulation. She glanced at Amara. Her twin's expression was calm, but the tension in her shoulders gave away the truth. Every second of this humiliation stoked a fire inside them that the car rolled to a stop. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as the back door yanked open. Wade's grin filled the frame. "Welcome home, ladies," dragged inside. They were shoved down a scuffed linoleum hallway that smelled of bleach and stale coffee. The booking desk was deserted, except for a tired sergeant who barely looked up from his crossword puzzle. Clearly, this wasn't the first time officers had hauled in troublemakers without explanation. "Put them in holding," Wade ordered, his tone casual, as if he were directing trash to a dumpster. The cuffs weren't removed. Instead, Amara was shoved into one cell, Aisha into another, their faces pressed briefly against the cold iron bars before the locks snapped shut. Silence settled like a blanket, the kind of silence that was calculated. Then he appeared, Chief Vernon Pike, silver hair slicked back, uniform pressed crisp as if he'd just stepped out of a photo shoot. His smile was polite, almost grandfatherly, but his eyes were sharp, cold, assessing. The kind of eyes that measured a person's value and decided whether they deserved mercy or ruin. "Well, well," he said, strolling between the cells with his hands clasped behind his back. "To outsiders making quite a scene in my town. We're not outsiders," Amara shot back. "We grew up here, and your men assaulted us without cause." Pike chuckled softly, as if humored by a child's tantrum. "Without cause? My officers report disorderly conduct, threatening behavior, resisting arrest." He tapped the bars lightly with his baton. "Paperwork will reflect that, of course. You're fabricating charges," Aisha said, stepping forward. "You know it. Everyone here knows it." The chief leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Fabricating? No, Agent Brooks. I prefer to call it maintaining order." "My order." The word agent hung in the air like a dagger. Aisha froze. Amara's eyes widened. He knew. Wade smirked from the corner, arms crossed, enjoying their reaction. "You didn't think we'd notice, did you?" To women sitting so calm, so collected, didn't take long to connect the dots. Pike's smile widened. "FBI, isn't it? That explains the attitude, the self-righteousness." He straightened his tie. "But let me be clear. Badges may mean something in Washington. Here, they mean nothing." The sisters exchanged a look, silent communication honed from a lifetime together. If the chief already knew, then the danger had escalated beyond backroom harassment. This was systemic, planned. Amara sat slowly on the metal bunk, hiding her clenched fists. Beneath her blouse, the tiny microphone sewn into her bra strap was still active, still transmitting. She adjusted her posture subtly, angling her body toward the chief. Every word needed to be captured. Chief Pike continued his stroll, speaking almost conversationally. "You see, Clearwater Ridge doesn't like disruption. Folks here know their place. When outsiders forget that, whether they're journalists, activists, or federal agents, we remind them. Sometimes paperwork gets lost. Sometimes witnesses change their stories. People disappear into the system." "Disappear?" Aisha's voice was low, dangerous. Pike met her glare with a smile that never reached his eyes. "Yes, and even an FBI badge won't save you from that." The words pressed against the walls like smoke, thick and suffocating. From the corner, Cody pulled out his phone, scrolling lazily. "Want me to file the initial report, Chief? I can make sure it's airtight." "Do that," Pike said. "Disturbing the peace, resisting arrest, threatening an officer. Standard charges." At assaults they swung first. "That's a lie," Amara snapped. Pike tilted his head. "In this building, truth is what we write it to be." The sergeant at the desk didn't even flinch, flipping another page of his crossword. Complicity lived in his silence. Aisha's hands curled around the bars. "You think you can bury us like the others, but someone will find out. There are witnesses." Pike leaned in so close she could see the lines etched into his face. "Witnesses." His smile thinned. "Witnesses forget, or they get reminded. Either way, nobody ever talks." A heavy quiet filled the station, broken only by the hum of the fluorescent lights. The chief turned on his heel, walking back toward his office. "Finish processing them," he ordered, "and make sure the paperwork is thorough." Wade and Troy exchanged satisfied smirks. Cody chuckled, pulling a blank report form from the desk. The sisters stood in their cells, fury simmering beneath their composure. They had faced cartel bosses, white-collar criminals, domestic terrorists. But this was different. This was personal. This was home. Amara shifted slightly, whispering under her breath, just loud enough for Aisha to hear. The mic caught everything. Aisha gave the smallest nod. Good. Let's make sure we get more. Hours crawled by. The sisters pretended to slump in defeat, heads lowered, shoulders hunched. Every so often, they exchanged brief glances, silent strategies. At midnight, the station grew quieter. Most officers had gone home. Only Wade, Troy, and Cody lingered, sipping bourbon from paper cups, their laughter echoing down the hallway. Their voices grew louder, freer, more reckless. Remember the Thompson kid? Wade bragged, swore he was clean. Couple grams planted in his locker, and bam, 5 years easy. Troy laughed, and his mama cried all night in court. That was the best part. Or the Williams family, Cody slurred. 3 generations in that house. Chief had it seized after we found a gun in the basement. Now it's a coffee shop. You seen the new espresso machine? Their laughter filled the station, bouncing off the cold walls. Amara's jaw clenched as she memorized every detail, every name. Their arrogance was evidence, and their drunken tongues were handing it over. But then footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. Wade straightened, setting down his cup. The others followed suit as a figure emerged from the hallway. Supervisor Elliot Crane. His polished shoes clicked against the floor. His suit still pressed, his FBI credentials glinting under the fluorescent light. Evening. Gentlemen, he said smoothly, his voice calm, almost bored. I understand we have some federal agents causing trouble in my town. He picked up the half-completed paperwork on the desk, scanning the charges with practiced indifference. My, quite a list. Assault, disorderly conduct, threats against officers. Aisha stepped forward, gripping the bars. Crane, your men assaulted us. They fabricated charges. You demand nothing. Crane interrupted coldly, his voice slicing through the air. He moved closer, his eyes flat, detached. You came into my jurisdiction uninvited. Stirred up my partners. Do you think a badge from Washington gives you immunity here? Amara's chest tightened. Partners? Crane's smile was thin, cruel. Yes, you see, I prefer things orderly. And Wade here. He maintains order quite well. We all do. The sisters stared at him, betrayal sinking deep. He turned to Wade. Finish the paperwork. Do it by the book, our book. Wade grinned, snatching up a pen. Troy chuckled, cracking his knuckles. Cody reached for another drink. The sisters exchanged a final look through the bar's anger, disbelief, and a silent vow. The iron bars cast long shadows across the holding cells. Aisha sat on the edge of her bunk, her wrists aching from the cuffs. Amara leaned back against the cold concrete wall, eyes fixed on the ceiling, replaying Crane's words over and over. You thought the FBI would save you. But I am the FBI here. The betrayal cut deeper than the bruises. Crane wasn't just complicit, he was a cornerstone of the corruption. For hours, the sisters kept up their performance, slumped shoulders, defeated postures, silence heavy enough to fool anyone watching. But beneath the act, their minds raced. Near dawn, the shuffle of softer footsteps echoed down the hall. Not Wade, not Troy, not Cody. These were lighter, quicker, hesitant. Officer Jenny Morales. She approached with 2 brown paper bags and styrofoam cups balanced on a tray. Breakfast, she called loudly enough for the desk sergeant to hear. Standard issue, when she slid the bag through the bars to Aisha. Her hand lingered for a fraction of a second. Something small and folded pressed into Aisha's palm. Aisha masked her reaction, murmuring, "Thanks." She waited until Jenny moved on to Amra's cell before palming the note into her lap, hidden under the thin blanket. Jenny's voice dropped to a whisper as she handed Amara her food. "Don't trust anyone. This isn't the first time." Then, louder, water fountains broken. "Cups only." When Jenny left, the sisters unwrapped their sandwiches, stale bread, thinner hem than paper. Beneath the wax paper, Aisha unfolded the note. Deputy Director Marcus Chen, emergency FBI contact. A phone number scrawled beneath it. Relief flickered in their eyes. There was still someone, somewhere, who might listen. Hours later, when the station quieted again, Jenny slipped back. She pretended to check their restraints, but her voice was barely audible. 10 minutes during shift change. File room landline. No cameras. Make it count. That night, chaos erupted at the front desk, spilled coffee, shouting. Papers scattered across the floor. Jenny moved fast, unlocking their cells with trembling keys. Go, she hissed. Aisha and Amara darted down the back corridor, Jenny leading them to the dusty file room. The smell of old paper and mildew hung thick. Jenny pointed to a landline shoved behind a cabinet. I'll keep watch. 5 minutes. Aisha's hands shook as she dialed. After 3 rings, a familiar voice answered. Deputy Director Chen, she whispered, her throat tight. It's Agent Aisha Brooks. My sister and I are being held. She didn't get to finish. The voice on the other end cut her off. Smooth but cold. Carter sisters? No, Brooks. Yes, I've already heard from Supervisor Crane. He tells me you'd caused quite a scene. Her stomach dropped. That's not true. We have proof recordings of officers confessing to stop talking. Chen's voice hardened. Whatever evidence you think you have, forget it. Drop this now while you still can. No, Aisha hissed. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, Chen interrupted. I'm protecting you. Some battles aren't worth fighting. Take the warning. Walk away. The line went dead. Amara's face paled. He's with them. Jenny appeared in the doorway, panic in her eyes. Someone's coming, get back. They rushed to their cells, chains rattling as they pretended never to have moved. Seconds later, Wade's massive frame filled the hall. He grinned, holding up his phone. Well, guess who just called me? Your FBI boss. Says you're nothing but problem agents. Says we should take our time. Amara slammed her fists against the bars, the sound ringing like a bell of rage. You corrupt piece of… Now. Wade wagged a finger. Is that any way to talk to an officer of the law? Especially when even your own superior doesn't want you. Aisha stayed perfectly still. Her fury so deep it had crystallized into something sharp, dangerous. Her voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. Then we burn them all. The words chilled the air. For the first time, Wade's smirk faltered. The next day brought a sliver of hope. Jenny returned with breakfast trays and whispered, Miguel has something. Hidden cameras. He got everything. Aisha's heart leapt. The bar. Jenny nodded. Every second. He wants help getting it out safely. Nia Torres is ready to meet. She's been trying to expose this for years. That afternoon, Nia arrived under the guise of a journalist seeking an interview. Guards let her in with mocking smiles, assuming it would be another hit piece against 2 troublemaking FBI agents. Nia's sharp eyes scanned the room. Her blazer was crisp, her recorder steady in her hands. She leaned forward, pretending to adjust her mic. Luis Miguel contacted me, she whispered quickly. I've seen the footage, but there's more. Judge Ruth Ellison has been collecting files for decades. Property seizures, false arrests, evidence tampering. Amara's eyes widened. Judge Ellison? Nia scribbled on her notepad as if taking quotes. But what she wrote made their hearts pound. Meeting tonight. Ellison's house. Miguel bringing footage. I have files. The sisters exchanged a glance. Hope, fragile but alive. But corruption never sleeps. That night, as Nia left her office, a dark van pulled up. Men in ski masks swarmed her, fists flying, leaving her broken and bleeding on the pavement. Her laptop smashed, her phone crushed, her briefcase full of evidence stolen. Across town, Miguel was closing the bar when the smell of gasoline hit him. Flames roared up the walls faster than he could react. He tried to reach his office where copies of his footage were stored, but the heat was unbearable. He barely escaped before the entire building collapsed in fire. And at the station, Chief Pike arrived at the cells with a smug smile. Rough night for your friends, he said casually. Sliding new paperwork through the bars, the charges read like a script from hell. Conspiracy, arson, attempted murder. Aisha's eyes scanned the fabricated evidence, fake phone records, fake bank transfers, false witness statements. You planned this, she said through gritted teeth. Pike's smile was cruel. Of course. Can't have dangerous arsonists sitting in our cozy little jail. Tomorrow, you'll be transferred to maximum security, where you belong. The sisters stared at the papers, fury and dread boiling inside them. Everything they'd fought for, the recordings, the evidence. The fragile network of allies was burning, but Amara's voice cut through the silence. Quiet but fierce. They're desperate. Aisha looked at her, confused. They're panicking, Amara said, her eyes burning with fire. And that means we're close. The sound of rattling keys broke the fragile silence of the holding cells. Aisha lifted her head, meeting her sister's eyes. Both women knew whatever was coming next wouldn't be routine. Wade Mercer's bulk filled the corridor, his smirk as wide as ever. Behind him, Troy Harlan twirled his baton like a toy, and Cody Voss jingled a pair of cuffs, eyes gleaming with cruel excitement. Rise and shine, ladies, Wade drawled, unlocking Aisha's cell. Time for a little field trip. Aisha stiffened as Troy yanked her roughly to her feet. In the next cell, Cody did the same to Amara, shoving her forward so hard she stumbled. Where are you taking us? Amara demanded. Wade's laugh echoed off the concrete walls. Somewhere quiet, somewhere private. The sisters were marched barefoot through empty corridors, their chains clinking against the floor. The night guard's desk was abandoned. No one witnessed their removal. Outside, humid summer air wrapped around them like a suffocating blanket. Parked in the shadows was a white van, its engine idling. Inside, Troy ordered, shoving Aisha toward the back. The doors swung open, revealing a dark, windowless cargo space. The smell of oil, rust, and old blood hit them immediately. No seats, no light, just metal walls and a bare floor. Aisha and Amara were shoved inside. The doors slammed shut, sealing them in blackness. A lock clicked from the outside. The van lurched forward, bouncing over gravel roads. The sisters slid against the metal floor, their cuffs cutting deeper into their wrists. Stay calm, Amara whispered in the dark. We'll find our moment. Aisha leaned back against the wall, forcing her breathing steady. We need to be patient. Wait until they get comfortable. Through the thin partition, the officers' voices carried back to them. You know what their problem is. Wade called from the driver's seat. They thought that FBI badge made them untouchable. Yeah, Troy snorted. Thought they could come into our county and start digging around, acting like they're better than us. Cody's laugh was shrill, boyish. Not so tough now, are they? In cuffs, riding to the swamp like everyone else who forgot their place. Their words dripped with venom and racism. This is my town, Wade growled. Always has been. And I'll be damned if I let two black women with shiny badges tell me how to run it. The sisters locked eyes in the dark. Fury burned between them, but also resolve. For 20 minutes, the van rattled down rough roads. Branches scraped the sides, and the smell of stagnant water grew stronger. Finally, the vehicle stopped with a jolt. The back doors flung open. Harsh moonlight spilled in, illuminating the looming silhouette of an abandoned warehouse. Broken windows stared like empty sockets, rusted machinery hulking inside like corpses of giants. The croak of swamp frogs and the buzz of cicadas filled the air. Home sweet home, Wade announced, gesturing with a mocking bow. At least for the next hour or so. The sisters were dragged out, their bare feet scraping against gravel inside. The warehouse smelled of mold and rot. Moonlight filtered through holes in the roof, casting long shadows across debris-strewn concrete. Rats skittered in the corners. Perfect spot, Troy said, swinging his flashlight beam across fallen beams and rusting oil drums. Nobody's been here in years. Nobody to hear anything. Wade circled the sisters slowly, savoring the moment. You know what I love about this job? Putting arrogant scum in their place, especially when they think dark skin and a badge make them special. Aisha's jaw tightened. This isn't about order. It's about your fear. You can't stand the idea of women like us holding authority. Wade's face twisted. Authority? You think you have authority here? This is about respect, about knowing your place in the natural order. Natural order? Amara laughed harshly. You mean white men with badges abusing whoever they want? Her words struck like a whip. Cody lashed out, kicking her legs from under her. She hit the floor hard, the cuffs cutting deeper. He pressed his boot into her back. You better shut your mouth, he hissed. Touch her again. Aisha growled, lunging forward, only to be yanked back by Troy. Or what? Troy mocked, tightening his grip. You'll file a complaint? Honey, the only paperwork filed tonight will be your missing persons report. Wade drew his service weapon, its barrel glinting in the pale light. He yanked Aisha's hair, forcing her head back, the gun pressing cold and final against her temple. "Any last words, FBI?" he whispered. "Something clever about justice?" Aisha met his eyes, her voice steady despite the pain. "Yeah, you need a gun to feel powerful. That makes you weak." The insult made his hand tremble. "Shut up, or what?" she taunted, her voice dripping with contempt. "You'll prove you're a man by shooting an unarmed woman in cuffs?" Behind her, Emra's fingers worked furiously. She had slipped a thin metal hairpin from her braids. Her movements were small, hidden by Cody's distraction. But each twist brought her closer to freedom. Wade's rage boiled over. He swung the gun to strike Aisha across the face, but Aisha ducked out at that exact moment. Emra's cuff clicked open. She surged upward, driving her elbow into Cody's gut. He doubled over with a grunt, his boot lifting off her back. "Now!" Aisha shouted. Troy lunged, but Aisha swept his legs out, sending him crashing to the floor. Cody scrambled for his baton, but Amara kicked it away, then spun, driving her knee into his ribs. Wade swung wildly with the gun, but his drunken aim faltered. Amara struck his wrist, the weapon clattering to the floor. Aisha's fist followed, connecting with his jaw in a satisfying crack. The warehouse exploded into chaos. Troy charged, but the sisters moved in perfect sync. Amara stepping left, Aisha right, their FBI training taking over. Troy's wild punch met empty air, and Amara used his momentum to flip him over her hip. He landed hard, the breath knocked out of him. Cody staggered up, blood running from his forehead. He fumbled for pepper spray, but Aisha's kick sent it flying. Her follow-up punch dropped him flat. Wade bellowed like a bull, throwing haymakers, but his drunken swings were slow. The sisters dodged and countered with precision strikes to his throat, solar plexus, kidneys. Each blow broke his swagger further. Amara spun, her kick catching Wade in the temple. He stumbled, dazed. Troy crawled to his feet, pulling a backup pistol from his ankle holster. But Aisha was faster. She grabbed his wrist, twisted sharply until bones snapped, and the gun clattered away. His scream echoed in the empty space. Within minutes, the tables had turned completely. Wade slumped against a support beam, bleeding and broken. Troy lay groaning on the floor, clutching his shattered wrist. Cody was out cold, sprawled in a pool of his own spit and blood. Amara stooped, retrieving Wade's own cuffs. With steady hands, she snapped them onto his wrists, tightening until the metal bit deep. "Welcome to our world," she said coldly. Aisha stood tall, chest heaving, sweat streaking her face. Despite bruises and cuts, her eyes burned with triumph. She looked down at Wade, once so smug, now helpless on the filthy concrete. Checkmate. The predator had become prey. The warehouse was silent except for the ragged breathing of the defeated men. Wade Mercer sat cuffed, blood trickling down his temple, his swagger gone. Troy Harlan lay groaning on the floor, cradling his broken wrist. Cody Voss was barely conscious, spit and blood pooling beneath him. Across from them stood Aisha and Amara Brooks, bruised, scraped, but unbroken. Aisha held up the small modified body cam she'd pulled from her boot. Its tiny red light blinked steadily. She angled it toward Wade. "What's that?" Wade spat, his words slurred, his eyes narrowing. "Your confession booth," Aisha said coldly. "Everything you say is streaming live. To FBI servers, and to the internet." For the first time, fear flickered across his face. "You're bluffing." Amara reached into her waistband, pulling out Aisha's phone, the one they'd managed to keep hidden in a custom holster, sewn into her clothing. She turned the screen so he could see the live viewer count climbing by the second, dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. "Not bluffing," she said evenly. "Smile for your audience." Wade's eyes darted to Troy and Cody, then back to the glowing red light. His bravado faltered, but alcohol loosened his tongue. He barked a harsh laugh. "You think anyone cares? This is my town. Always has been." "Say it louder," Aisha pressed, stepping closer. "Tell them how you keep control." Wade's lip curled. "Control? These streets were peaceful before your kind started getting uppity. We keep people in line. That's how it's always been. Plant a little evidence here. Rough someone up there. They learn fast who runs things." The words spilled from his mouth, raw and venomous. Emra's voice was sharp. cutting through his rant. What about the quotas, Wade? Tell them about that, he sneered. Of course there are quotas. Someone has to keep those neighborhoods in check. Chief Pike knows it. Department knows it. Hell, even your precious FBI knows it. Why do you think your supervisor Crane warned us you were calling? The warehouse air turned electric. Aisha's eyes narrowed. So you admit Crane's been protecting you? The realization hit Wade too late. His face went pale. You set me up, he snarled, struggling against the cuffs. You tricked me, no, Aisha said, her voice low and steady. We gave you the rope. You hung yourself. Across town, Officer Jenny Morales sat at her desk in the police station, her hands flying across her keyboard. The live stream blared from her monitor, Wade's drunken confession echoing through the room. She opened tabs, blasting the stream onto social media, tagging journalists she trusted, linking newsrooms across the state. Within minutes, local stations picked it up. Then national outlets. Hashtags exploded. Hashtag Clearwater corruption. Hashtag Cop Scotlive. Hashtag Justice for Clearwater. Viewers poured in by the tens of thousands. Phones buzzed. Screens lit up. For the first time in decades, the dirty secrets of Clearwater Ridge couldn't be buried. Back at the warehouse, Troy groaned, trying to push himself up with his uninjured arm. Shut up, Wade. Don't say another. Shut your mouth. Wade snapped, thrashing against the cuffs. They don't get to win. Amara crouched down, leveling her gaze at him. It's not about us. It's about every life you ruined. Maria Rodriguez, James Washington, families you terrorized. Tell the camera why you did it. Sweat beaded on Wade's forehead. Lies, he rasped. All lies. Then what about tonight? Aisha cut in, her voice sharp as a blade. Tell the world why you arrested us. Was it because we broke a law, or because we wouldn't let you grope us in a bar? Wade's jaw clenched. His silence screamed guilt. The livestream viewer count passed 150,000. Jenny hit send on one last tip, sending the link to a national civil rights attorney she followed in secret. She leaned back, heart racing. For years she'd collected scraps of evidence in silence. Now the floodgates were open. She whispered to herself, they can't bury this. Not anymore. The rumble of engines shattered the night. Headlights flared outside the warehouse. Doors slammed. The crunch of boots echoed across the gravel. Aisha and Amara exchanged a glance. The live stream camera never wavered. The warehouse doors burst open. FBI tactical teams stormed inside, weapons raised, flanking with military precision. State police followed, radios crackling, their eyes scanning the scene to freeze. A commanding voice shouted. Wade's head snapped up, his face twisted with desperation. It's all lies. They attacked us. We're the victims. His voice rose to a shriek, spittle flying. I'm a police officer. Not anymore, Amara said coldly, standing tall. The lead agent moved in, reading Wade his rights as others secured Troy and Cody. Cameras captured everything, their bruised faces, their cuffed wrists, the sisters standing tall over them. You can't do this. Wade roared, thrashing as agents dragged him up. I run this town. No, Aisha said, her voice calm and certain. You ran it. Past tense. The camera kept rolling, capturing his final meltdown for the world to see. Across Clearwater Ridge, the story unfolded in real time. Phones lit up in diners, living rooms, and dorms. Mothers who had lost sons to false charges watched in stunned silence. Business owners who'd been shaken down by Pike's men dropped what they were doing, eyes glued to the feed. In one living room, Mrs. Washington clutched her chest, tears streaming down her face as she heard Wade admit the frame job that had stolen 3 years from her son. My boy, she whispered. My boy's name is clear. In another, Miguel stood in the ruins of his burned bar, watching the live stream on his phone, his face streaked with soot and tears. Finally, he whispered. Finally, they're exposed. At the police station, Chief Vernon Pike stood in his office, blinds half closed. The live stream blared from every officer's phone outside his door. His empire of silence, decades in the making, was crumbling in front of him. The door burst open. Federal agents stormed inside, weapons raised. Chief Vernon Pike, the lead agent, barked, "You're under arrest for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and civil rights violations. Pike's face remained stoic as they cuffed him, but his hands trembled. Reporters' cameras flashed as he was marched through the station, his walk of shame broadcast live. Officers who once feared him turned away, no longer willing to shield him. And in a gleaming office miles away, Supervisor Elliot Crane sat rigid in his chair as Internal Affairs boxed up his awards. His polished career dissolved in a single night. "You betrayed your badge," an investigator said flatly. Dropping an indictment on his desk, Crane's face drained of color as agents escorted him out, cameras capturing every step. His fall was as spectacular as it was deserved. Back at the warehouse, Aisha lowered the body cam at last. The red light blinked steadily, still streaming, still recording. She and Amara stood side by side. Battered but unbowed, Amara spoke into the lens, her voice resonant with quiet power. "Tonight, you saw the truth. The corruption we've endured, the lives they've destroyed, and you saw that no one, no matter the badge, no matter the title, is above the law." Aisha's voice followed, calm but burning with resolve. "This isn't the end. This is the beginning, because justice isn't given. It's fought for." The live stream ended there, but the fire it ignited had only just begun. 3 weeks after the live stream, Clearwater Ridge no longer felt like the same town. The old community hall, once a dusty relic used for bingo nights and budget meetings, buzzed with life. Every creaking wooden chair was filled. People stood shoulder to shoulder along the walls, spilling out into the hallways. The evening sun slanted through tall windows, dust motes dancing in the golden light dot at the front. Maya Green stood at the podium. Her blazer was crisp, but her face still bore faint scars from the night she was ambushed. None of it dimmed the fire in her eyes. "Tomorrow," she began, her voice steady and strong, "my full investigation goes to press. 6 months of digging, hundreds of interviews, and thousands of documents." She tapped the stack of papers before her, thick as a dictionary. "We are exposing every false arrest, every planted piece of evidence, every cover-up. The story doesn't end with Wade Mercer or Vernon Pike. This was a network, a machine designed to crush people, especially people of color. And tonight, it ends." The crowd stirred, a murmur of grief and vindication rolling through them. An elderly man in the front row clutched a yellowed photo of his grandson, his voice breaking. He lost 5 years in prison for something they made up. Tears streaked down his weathered cheeks. Others nodded, clutching their own stories. Maya's gaze swept the room. "This isn't just about corruption. It's about you. The mothers who buried sons too soon. The shopkeepers who paid hush money. The witnesses threatened into silence. For decades, you were ignored. Tonight, you are heard." Applause swelled, shaking the rafters. Judge Clarence Wilkes, tall and dignified despite his age, rose slowly from his seat. His silver hair caught the light as he walked to the podium. The room hushed. "I sat on the bench for 30 years, he said, his deep voice filling the hall. "I watched good people destroyed by a system meant to protect them. And I will admit this to you, I was afraid. Every time I tried to speak, they threatened my family. So I stayed silent. And for that, I am ashamed." His hand gripped the podium, knuckles white. "But those days are over. Chief Pike's network is shattered. Federal investigators are reopening hundreds of cases. The machine they built is broken, and it will not rise again." The room erupted into cheers, some people crying openly, others hugging strangers. Officer Jenny Morales stepped to the front, no longer in uniform. She had turned in her badge the same day Pike was arrested. Her voice trembled, but carried conviction. 17 officers have been indicted so far. She reported, "The FBI's Civil Rights Division has stationed a permanent team here, and we're rebuilding the department from scratch with community oversight." She paused, looking out over the sea of faces. "I served under that corrupt system for years. I told myself I couldn't change it, that staying silent was safer. But watching the Carter sisters fight back showed me I had to choose. I chose the people." The crowd rose to its feet, applauding. Some reached forward to shake her hand. At the back of the hall, Luis's bar, now a charred ruin, stood quietly until the crowd noticed him. Applause swelled again as he made his way to the podium. His face was still lined with soot stains from the night of the fire, but his chin was high. When those officers attacked the sisters, they thought it was just another night. Another abuse of power. But I hid cameras in my bar. I caught them bragging, confessing, and that gave us the proof we needed. They burned my bar to the ground, but they couldn't burn the truth. The audience roared, clapping and stomping their feet. Then the hall fell silent as two figures entered from the back, Aisha and Amara Brooks. They wore no uniforms, no suits, just the same simple clothes they had worn on that first night, shorts and tops, still bearing faint stains from their ordeal. Their bruises had faded, but they didn't hide the scars. They walked hand in hand down the aisle as the crowd parted, whispers rippling like a wave. There they are, the sisters, the ones who stood up. At the front, Maya stepped aside. The sisters faced the crowd. For a moment, the weight of it all hung heavy. Every face, every story, every ounce of pain that had led to this night. Aisha stepped forward first, her FBI badge glinting under the hall lights. When we came back to Clearwater Ridge, we wanted a quiet night, she said. Her voice carried to every corner. But what happened to us that night wasn't new. It was what this town had lived with for decades. The only difference was we had the training to fight back, and we refused to stay silent. Her words hung in the air, sharp and undeniable. Amara joined her, placing a steady hand on her sister's shoulder. This isn't just about us, she said. It's about every person they tried to break, every family they tried to destroy, every truth they tried to bury. And tonight, we say, no more. The hall erupted. Applause thundered, chants of no more, no more. Rising like a storm, elderly residents who remembered segregation wiped tears from their eyes. Teenagers raised their fists in solidarity. Mothers held up photos of children wronged by the system for the first time. Clearwater Ridge felt united. Outside the hall, reporters clustered on the steps, cameras flashing. Signs waved, justice for Clearwater. We believe the sisters. No one is above the law. The crowd parted as Aisha and Amara stepped into the night. People reached out to touch them, to thank them, to whisper stories of survival. One woman clutched their hands, sobbing. My boy lost 3 years because of them. But because of you, he's free. The sisters embraced her, their own eyes wet. Above them, the night sky was vast and clear. For the first time in years, it felt like breathing fresh air. Maya's article dropped the next morning. Headlines blazed across the nation. Clearwater corruption network exposed. FBI agents turntables on racist cops in viral livestream. Decades of injustice unraveled by two sisters. News vans lined the streets. Federal task forces combed through years of sealed files. Politicians once silent scrambled to issue statements. And across America, communities watched Clearwater Ridge and whispered, if it can happen there, maybe it can happen here too. That night, back in the quiet of their motel room, Aisha and Amara sat side by side on the bed, the noise of the world finally fading. Amara exhaled slowly. Do you think it's over? Aisha shook her head. It's never over, but it's a start. And sometimes, that's enough. They clasped hands, a gesture as old as their childhood. Through every bruise, every betrayal, every night in a cell, they had held on to each other. And now, standing together, they had torn down an empire of fear. As the town rebuilt, as families found justice, as voices once silenced finally spoke, the sisters became more than agents, more than survivors. They became symbols, proof that even against decades of corruption, even when the system seemed immovable, truth could still break through. And as the stars glimmered above the small southern town, Amara whispered into the dark, her words carrying both promise and warning. They thought we were victims, but we are the storm,